But I think the real concern here is that people are kind of coming to a state where they will say that this guy's a hero as opposed to
Oh,
a
yes.
villain, right?
Oh, yes.
Because
That's because we live in a dystopian society.
I agree. I do agree with that. I've said those exact words to my own husband, John. I've told him this is what dystopia looks like.
Yes,
This is it. We've always had
it
these
is.
movies of dystopian,
Yeah,
futures, but
yeah,
we're in it.
yeah, we are.
Uh, People will eventually rise up against what they feel is injustice. Right. Welcome to another episode of the Bloomburg Democrat. I am Sally Taylor. This is my highly intelligent younger brother, John Daniels. We
Hello.
are back with another discussion today, and we thought we would talk about the murder of the CEO. I believe his name is Brian Thompson. Do I have that right?
I think that's right.
United Healthcare CEO.
Yes.
It has been an interesting story, course of events. And the young man who is allegedly responsible for this murder is actually, in some areas, being treated as a folk hero as opposed to a criminal and a murderer. And so we thought we might talk about, how that all has come to be. So,
Yep.
John, I
Yep.
happen to have already heard you say you think
Yep.
that he might be that folk hero.
Yes.
Tell us a
I
little
think
bit about your perspective.
so. I woke up one morning and read the news that this guy had been murdered, and I saw that he was the CEO of a health insurance organization in the United States, and I thought, finally, an asshole has bit the dust, right? Because there's absolutely no way this guy is going to be a stand-up human being. He is being paid millions to deny health care to people who are paying to receive health care. So I thought maybe this is the beginning, right? Finally, people who are preying on society are going to get what's coming to them. And I saw a little bit of the news. I'm in Japan, so what I read on the news is just like if I'm actively searching for US news, I find US news. And when I'm not searching actively, it's very easy to miss everything. So I don't know everything that's going on in the US. It's only a few things here and there when I'm actively searching. And so I read a little bit about it. And the first thing I noticed was, of course, some news outlets were talking to people who like barely knew him, right? Investors who met him at a meeting and saying, "Oh, he's a pretty nice guy. He's super humble and stuff like this." And I don't know the guy. Maybe he is. But to me, it reads like what the news organizations typically do is they kind of whitewash all of these CEOs and make them seem like they're these wonderful people when I know that they're not. And so I was very immediately skeptical, and I thought the person who did this, I don't know if he's a contract killer or what. Uh, I even kind of really thought that maybe it was his wife that was maybe contracting this guy to knock him off, because that seemed like something that can often happen.
Yeah. With
And
murders, it's the first person you look at is the spouse,
right,
typically.
right, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's usually somebody that you know, right?
Mhm.
And so that's what I was kind of thinking. I was thinking, okay, well, maybe it's his wife, and I read that maybe it was like a rival company or something. And I thought, well, that doesn't really make any sense to me. Like, why does one company want to kill the CEO of this other company? Like that doesn't make any sense. What's he doing? Right? And that didn't make any sense to me. I thought it was maybe either his wife or it was going to be someone who had paid a bunch of money in healthcare insurance premiums. Their loved one had been denied coverage and died as a result, and this was the situation. Somebody was going to take care of the person who had basically killed his or her. family.
Mhm.
And turns out it's kind of like it's none of those, right? Maybe, I guess. Again, I haven't read
Yeah.
that much recently.
Not exactly.
I've
Yeah,
been
it's
sick.
not exactly those
I've
things.
been
Yes, that's right.
avoiding things in general. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know. Tell me a little bit more. Let's fill me in
Okay,
a little bit
well,
because I think I missed
so
a bit.
here's sure. Well, here's what I know and have seen. Well, I'll say no. Here's what I have seen about this young man who allegedly, because we're still going to say allegedly, he of
Right.
course has not been convicted yet,
Yeah.
of having committed this murder. And the evidence that's showing up against him is pretty convincing.
Yeah.
So there's good reason to believe that they've probably found the right guy.
Yeah.
He is a young man who is from a wealthy family.
Right. Ivy
And
League
so,
and stuff, right?
yeah, he's got a master's degree. I have seen, old schoolmates talk about him, say, yeah, he was a great guy. He was helpful. He was smart. He was, all of these things.
Yeah.
And apparently, though, he had a back injury that
Yeah.
had plagued him for a large portion of his life.
Mhm.
And whether or not that plays into, his choices or his decisions is yet to be determined. But,
Yeah.
he's been in the health system. I also am aware that his family owns end of life healthcare facilities, assisted living facilities.
Uh-huh.
And I'm a little bit aware that United Healthcare has supposedly been buying up a lot of those facilities as well. So this could
Uh-huh.
also play into maybe his decision. Not the facilities that his family owns, but others that he then basically has sucked a lot of the money out of the
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
the CEO, meaning
Right.
that they take them and they run them more cheaply with less
Right. Right. Right.
services,
Of
less care
course.
for the people who are
Of
there.
course.
Okay.
Right.
So whether or not that has an influence, again, yet to be seen.
Yeah.
But this young man definitely seems to have left behind evidence, manifestos, that sort of thing, that
Right.
really do look at the healthcare system and how they deny, defend, and what's the other D word that they
Yes.
were
What was
using?
it?
uh, depose, deny, defend, depose.
Yeah.
Uh, when people make their claims for healthcare through
Right.
the insurance company.
And I read that he had
And
written on the bullets, deny, defend, something as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
or there was something left behind scratched. Yeah, where
Yeah.
those words were left at the
Yeah.
scene.
Like in the
In
shell casings, I believe it
addition,
was.
yeah, it's also interesting that it was a 3D printed gun that was.
Yes, that was interesting
Mm,
because they were
mm,
saying it was going to be like this British, like long-barreled type of a thing at first, or they thought it was going to have a silencer, and then they said no, it's no
yeah,
silencer, and then it was this supposed British make of a gun that's a long-barreled 9 millimeter or something, and then turned out it was 3D printed.
yeah,
Yeah,
which is really interesting. Which
yeah,
then puts the whole gun laws thing into another question.
yeah.
How do you control
I'm
guns if
impressed that
people
a
can
3D
print them?
printed gun was jammed, cleared, and then continued to fire. That's a
Yeah.
very impressive 3D printed gun.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it just a little extra tidbit of information. But I
Mhm.
think the real concern here is
Mhm.
that people are kind of coming to a state where they will say that this guy's a hero as opposed to
Oh,
a
yes.
villain,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Because
That's because we live in a dystopian society.
I agree. I do agree with that. I've said those exact words to my own husband, John. I've told him this is what dystopia looks like.
Yes,
This is it. We've always had
it
these
is.
movies of dystopian, futures,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we're in it.
Yeah, we are.
Uh, People will eventually rise up against what they feel is injustice.
Yes.
They do. And the fact is that there has been a complete shift in the
Mhm.
wealth of this nation. It
Yeah.
used to be pretty balanced between the haves and the have nots.
Right.
And that divide has, over the last especially 50 years
Yeah.
has become dramatic.
Yeah. Yep.
And for
So this
those who
this
have been siphoning that wealth,
yeah. Yeah.
they have to know that it it can't go on forever
No, of
without
course it can't.
people coming to a point of violence.
Well, like corporate profits cannot continue to increase year after year after year. I mean, they can't.
It's not sustainable.
Of course not.
And I
It
think
never
that's
is.
right.
There's no
Right.
market where you can considerably conceive, maybe like farming, where the population continues to increase. And so if you keep making more food, you'll keep making money. But like it's not like your margins are increasing. If you
Right.
just continue to produce more food, you'll continue to keep making profit. Something like that, like, but even still, it's such a limited degree to the profits that you can make. But corporations are just, they're squeezing blood out of every stone they can find.
They are.
Yeah,
And like you said, it's not sustainable
right.
without people finally losing their shit is
Yeah,
what I'll say.
yeah,
Um, and I do think that's kind of where this young man is at. It
right.
seems that has become his perspective to the
Yes.
point he was willing to take action
He's a
against someone
person
that
of conscience, and he's willing to limit his tolerance to the intolerable. Like, I watched a video on YouTube. I think it was on a channel called Counter Arguments, and it was talking about how tolerant can you be before your intolerance works against you. I mean, before your tolerance works against you, right? You can't be tolerant against the intolerant, right?
right.
Something like that. And I think this guy kind of it hit his limit, right? His personal limit. Like you can't just keep saying, yeah, well, I guess it's okay, right? Because who's going to do something? Clearly, the police are not going to do anything. I mean, the rules have all been made into the favor of these people. Like they're able to just rob everyone blind, right?
And it's
Bankers,
legal. And it's
yes,
legal.
rob
Yeah.
people blind left and right. When you have these overdraft charges on your account, like that's just the bank stealing money from people who don't have money, and it's completely legal. And then when you have a poor person who wants to steal some bread to feed his family, then he goes to jail for a couple years, right? This is ridiculous. So finally, some people of, I think, very high moral integrity are saying enough is enough, and they're doing something about it. And to me, it reminds me of like the French Revolution. These people were tired of the monarchy's bullshit, and they decided they were going to do something about it. And they didn't have a trial and say, okay, well, you just got to go to jail and you can't keep doing this. And it's certainly not in the same vein that we have with corporations now, where the people who are making these choices for these corporations and doing terrible, terrible things are having absolutely no responsibility at all, right? And the corporation doesn't even do anything other than pay a very small fraction of their yearly income. And so nothing essentially happens. It's the cost of doing business. And so this guy, possibly, I mean, allegedly, he's decided that he's going to, hold some people accountable.
Yeah.
And for me, that's
Well,
okay.
and the thing is, CEOs are rewarded
Oh,
for this
yes.
behavior. They get
Yes, they are.
giant bonuses but based off how much short-term income they can squeeze out
Yes.
of the system.
Yes. And
And they're not looking long-term at all.
oh no, no, not at all. It's all short-term profits. And I was reading something today about the airline industry and how certain, maybe all of them, probably all of them, when you want to have like a carry-on bag and you go and you want to carry your bag on, and then the gate agents are given bonuses for how many bags that they say cannot be carried on. They have to be checked. And then when your bag is checked, you have to pay extra money, right? And they are given like $5, $10 a bag for every bag that they say, sorry, you can't check this, you can't carry this on, it has to be checked. And there are bags that fit into the little device where you put your bag to see if it fits. They fit, and then the gate agent says, nope, sorry, it doesn't fit. You have to check it. You're gonna have to pay the fee. And then they get a kickback. And
Hmm.
so there is currently a senator. I don't remember the name. I just read it today, and I was briefly kind of skimming through it. And there's a senator today who's I think he has proposed some legislations like the anti airline. I can't remember the word that was used, but it was like to stop the fraud, basically,
Right.
right? Because that's what it is. And so it happens everywhere, and it's completely legal. We allow corporations to do just whatever the hell they want, and nobody can do anything.
Yeah, it's considered a fee that they can charge or whatever it
Exactly.
happens to be. So
Exactly.
I saw something interesting yesterday. It was a short, I think I saw probably on Facebook, but it was
Mm.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who we
Yep.
frequently call AOC. That's
Right.
her shortened
Right. Right.
name.
Right. Yep.
She was saying something along the lines of that people don't realize that these denials of their claims or these
Mhm.
acts by corporations are actually passive acts of violence
Yeah.
against people.
Yeah.
And so when it violence is returned, you can't be surprised by that. That's not
No,
exactly
of
what she
course.
said, but she was
Yep.
basically talking about it in terms of acts of violence, passive acts of violence that people finally return with non-passive acts.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And I think she has a legitimate statement in that
I think
for
she does
sure.
too. Yep. Yep.
Yep.
In Japan, this has been called microaggressions, and it's a very benign thing here. But like when you go out to eat with a Japanese person and they say, "Oh, your Japanese is so good," or "Wow, you can use chopsticks. Wow, that's amazing," right? And like this is these tiny little things that you hear on a daily basis that just kind of start to drive you crazy, right? And they're called microaggressions because they're not really aggressive, but it's
Right.
it's just this
It's a
thing that kind of
tiny surprise or
it's like
insult.
it's this tiny little pickaxe that's just chipping, 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 chipping every day, and then
Yeah.
half of your face is missing, right? After a month.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's that kind of a thing, really. And with
Yeah.
CEOs, that's basically what they're doing, right? Especially healthcare CEOs. Every decision that they make is basically denying healthcare to people so that they can get
Right.
more money, right? Like, what are you
Right.
paying for?
Well, talking about memes, I'm very influenced by memes. That's terrible because it's probably all propaganda. But when they
Probably
make
so.
sense to
Probably all by
me,
Russia.
right? When they make sense to me, I like to share them. And
Well,
one of
truth
them
is
said,
truth. There's no doubt about it.
right, right. One
Yeah.
of them said that insurance companies are basically practicing medicine without a license,
Oh, yes.
in that
Oh,
they can tell
yes.
you what medicine you can have, what procedures you
Yes.
can have, which ones you can't
Yes.
have. And
Exactly.
that's what should always be between you and your doctor.
Yes. Only the doctor should be able to tell you what you can and
Right.
can't have. Yes. Yeah, I
Yeah.
completely agree with that.
And so I don't know what the solution to all this is going to be. However, I feel like if a lot of people are concerned about their safety,
Yeah,
things might shift. That's not the way I would
it
choose for it
should.
to happen.
No, no, I
I
agree with
mean,
you. It
I don't
should
like
be
the
a
loss of life.
it should be a
I
better
don't
way.
like murder.
Unfortunately, people do not seem to respond until it's an emergency.
Mhm.
And so, and even then, sometimes we just don't do anything about it, right? Because like the drug crisis, like the opioid crisis was going in like in insane directions, and nobody was doing anything. And the people at Purdue who were behind all of it, were hand over fist making money, right?
Right.
These people should have been on the chopping block. This should have been off of their heads from the very beginning.
As a general rule, they don't even go to jail,
No, they don't.
which is
So
why we,
why would you leave it to the government to do anything when you know that the government's going to do nothing?
well, and the solution is to unrig the government. A lot of people have heard
Yes,
that term before, but it's
yes,
really about the
yes.
problem of having corporate money in politics.
Yeah. So who's going to fix that?
Yeah, well, corporations are going to fight it tooth and nail because
So, you
they've
know,
been given the
yeah,
they've been given the position of being considered people. I mean, an
yeah.
actual organization is considered a
Yes, I
person
know.
now.
I know. That's crazy. So, the Young Turks, I like the Young Turks, more or less, the YouTube news organization. And I don't always agree with what they say. Like sometimes I just feel like, oh my God, what are you talking about? But generally, I think they got it going on. Like they kind of understand. And they have like what they call the wolf pack, which is the idea is to use a pack to kind of undo packs, right?
Mhm.
And so the wolf pack, I believe, from my understanding, if my memory serves correctly, is the idea is to go to the states and cause the states to one by one vote to make a constitutional amendment to remove money from politics, right? I believe that's what it's for. And it's not working yet. So I I
And
I don't
yeah,
know if there is a solution other than revolution of a
right.
violent
Well, and
type,
so
right?
that's kind of where I have concerns we're heading. I mean,
Yeah.
revolution is painful, it's scary, it's never goes well for either side, to be honest,
Yeah.
with regard to
No.
the loss of life and the loss of resources and, all of the horrible things that come with revolution. But
Yeah.
there, as a general rule, societies get to a point where the haves oppress the have nots too much, too
Yep.
far, and
And they
then
eat the
they look to
rich.
blame,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so it's really interesting to me too. And I'm going to get political now. I'm going to get political.
Hmm.
It's interesting to me that we have a nation that just voted in for another term a very wealthy billionaire who has plans to pack the cabinet with more billionaires,
Yeah.
and yet they were voted in by people who have very little.
Yep.
And I don't see, that solving any problems at
No,
all
it's not going to solve anything. It's going to make everything
because
worse.
it's absolutely going to get worse.
Yeah.
And I don't,
I mean,
I don't know where to go
if
with
they were
that.
like if they were voting in maybe like Bill Gates and maybe Warren Buffett or like oh what's there's a couple other people who seem to be somewhat altruistic like if it were these guys, then you might think, okay, well, these are people who have made their billions and they see that everything is rigged and they kind of want to make it better for everyone. And then there might be some path to redemption there, but that's not who we voted for, right? Donald Trump is, despite what he might say occasionally, like he's not really looking out for anybody but himself.
Right.
He's very much a very self-centered type of person.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about how we got to the point where we are right now with uh, the top 1%, holding most of the wealth in the nation,
Yeah,
because it was much more balanced. Like I said, back before uh, World War One, and actually through World War One, there was a lot of growth of the middle class, which was very
yeah,
sustaining for the rest of the population. When the
yeah,
middle class is strong,
yeah,
they do well higher up, they do well slightly below. It,
yeah,
as a general rule, that's
yeah,
what supports the whole system. And the middle
yeah,
class has been shrinking, shrinking, shrinking
yeah,
since that time. So in the
yeah,
70s, we had basically a recession,
yeah,
which gave us Ronald Reagan in the 80s, who said, we're going to fix this with trickle down economics,
yeah.
right? We're going to give all of these breaks to the wealthy and to corporations, and they're going to reinvest it, which is then going to
Mhm.
support the middle and lower classes.
Yeah.
Well, guess what?
Yeah. Well, they invested it into third world countries. They took all of our
Yeah.
jobs and they sent them overseas.
Well, they invested it where they could get cheaper labor, right?
Labor,
Which
yes,
is
exactly.
But
but
that was but
I'm
then
also a
globally that was
globalist.
going to happen. Right.
I'm a
Globally
globalist.
that was going to
I
happen.
think, Leia, yeah, I think let's put money into the poor countries and raise them up,
Yeah.
and
Right.
then everybody's happier, right?
Yes.
So there's poverty on multiple scales here. We have national scale where we have, homeless people in the streets of our country, but then there's far poorer people out in the world who also need to
Right.
be helped, right? So I'm a globalist myself. I think we do need
Yes.
to invest into these poor countries,
Yes.
um, but not at the detriment of the people who are supporting these third world countries, right?
Exactly. So trickle down economics did not trickle down.
No, of course
Instead,
it
it
didn't.
got hoarded and it
Yes,
stayed with the top,
right,
20% and
right.
especially the 1%, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
so when we now say, oh, the economy's booming and doing well, which is what is being said about Biden's economy, it's booming. We're doing great. We're doing better than anywhere else in the world right now.
yeah,
The problem is it's still only booming for the upper classes. It is
yeah,
not booming for the middle and lower classes.
yeah,
And at some point, when you turn them into serfs and slaves,
yeah,
which is essentially what's still occurring,
yeah,
they do rebel. And I
yeah.
have deep concerns about that.
Concerns as in you feel bad for them
I,
and you
it,
you sympathize with them.
no, no. Well, I sympathize with the middle and lower classes
Yeah,
because the upper classes are so short-sighted and so grasping
yeah,
that they don't see that in the long term, the only way for them to survive is to
yeah,
continue to build the classes that buy their products.
yeah. Of course,
When
of
they
course.
have no money, they don't buy. And if
Yeah,
they don't buy, you lose,
of course, of
right?
course. Yeah,
It has to be a cycle that feeds into itself or
yeah,
it will collapse.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I think the writing's on the wall.
Yeah.
Like these people at the top should be really, really worried right now. They should see that, okay, people cannot make ends meet, and
Mm-hmm.
they're not just going to lay down and die. They're going to fight, right? People
Mm-hmm.
fight for life. Everybody fights for
Right.
life. Animals fight for life. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
just what life does. Life strives to continue. And when the person that's preventing you from continuing is just a rich person who's taking all your money, like they're going to be the first target, right? That's the one you're going to fight against. And maybe you're fighting with bullets and maybe you're fighting with other means, but it's not going to end well for the people who are have their foot on the necks of everyone else,
Yeah.
right? You can't have your foot on the neck of everyone. Like someone's going to jump up and grab your neck.
So why don't we learn from history, John?
Oh my God, people are stupid. Really.
We're both
I,
stupid and we're brilliant at the same
I
time. I
know.
mean,
Well, I think people are stupid and individuals are brilliant. How many
yeah.
people have been pulling humanity up? Like I feel like it's maybe a small number of people. And but I don't think it's the fault of people in general. Um, it's education. It's always education. Yeah, people are just not being taught how to think. People are not being taught how to work for the betterment of themselves, really. Maybe
And
they
the
think they are, but selfishness is not necessarily working for your own good, right? Working
right,
for your
that's the
own
thing.
good is more
Yeah.
than just I got mine, Jack, right?
Right.
So, as we've said before, like you kind of have to be a little bit collectivist, right? A
Hmm.
rising tide raises all boats. That's great, but you have to raise the tide. You can't just raise your own boat,
Right.
right? Your own boat going up is not the tide. So
Hmm.
stop deluding yourself.
Yeah. I agree with you completely. So while I don't like the fact that this young man is kind of being held up as a a good guy for having
I
done what
do.
he's
I
done.
like it. I like it because look at
I
George Washington, right?
Well,
George
it's murder.
Washington and all these other guys, they murdered plenty of people.
Yeah.
They just called it war. And so, even suppose terrorists here and there, like our terrorist is someone else's freedom fighter, you know? I mean, that's what it
Right.
is.
But I
So
also
there
don't
there
like
are
war,
no
John.
no, I don't like war either, Sally. I really don't like war. But I understand why people are drawn towards it, like or
Yeah.
why they feel like they're forced to go into war. In the
Right.
case when it's a war that you're choosing to go and make war in someone else's country, well, I don't agree with that at all, right? Russia in Ukraine, in my opinion, completely wrong. United
Right.
States in Vietnam, completely wrong. United
Right.
States in probably for Iraq for sure, I think completely wrong.
Right.
Afghanistan, yeah, a little bit self-defense there. Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, I don't know, probably wrong.
Yeah.
Like, just don't make war. But if you're going to basically bring war to someone's door, in the case of Russia and Ukraine, don't be surprised when they start bombing your capital. And when it's
Right.
a health care CEO denying care to people, don't be surprised when they start bringing the guns. That's how I
I
feel.
Yeah. Well, while I say I don't condone it, I understand it.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
the
Okay.
difference. So
Yes,
I
yes,
can
yes.
sit and watch how and why this happened and go, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that I say, well, set the guy free. He's obviously a good guy, right?
Yeah,
He made a
I
choice.
kind of
He
feel
made a
like
choice.
acquit. I would
Yeah.
have quit. I would
Well,
hang the jury. I would have quit.
the only way that I can see that happening is if he can claim, temporary insanity or even, complete insanity. There was an
Mm,
interesting thing that I read though. There is because this kid had back pain. I say kid,
yeah,
he's a young man, young adult.
yeah, yeah.
He had an issue with chronic back pain,
Right.
and there is a correlation between back pain and psychotic episodes
Yeah,
because it's just unbearable,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And so I can understand that as well. So, maybe that's what they claim for this young man
yeah, yeah,
in his defense. He has reasons, and
yeah,
a lot of people can see validity in those reasons for
yep,
making the choices that he did.
yep.
As a society, though, we really can't condone murder. We need
No,
to
and okay, so what are we going to do
solve the
about this
problem.
CEO who was basically murdering a bunch of people by
Yeah,
promoting the denial of healthcare that these people were paying
right.
for?
We got
So
to
what
change our
about
health
his
care.
murder? What about his murder?
Yeah.
How far must we be tolerant towards the intolerant,
I
right?
agree. Like I
You
said,
can't
AOC
be
was right.
you can't have unlimited tolerance, right? You have to draw a line. You say, we will be tolerant until this point, and if you go beyond this point, you're toast.
Yeah. And this young man seemed to have been a very bright, intelligent,
Yep.
well educated, from a wealthy family,
Yeah.
kind of
I
an
think he's
individual.
probably a more moral person than the healthcare CEO. Again, I don't know. I don't know everybody
Yeah.
personally. I don't know
Right.
anybody personally. That's probably for the best. But from the outside looking in, I say I quit that guy and message to all the fat cats out there, we're coming for you. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to see it done through changing the government and changing
Yeah.
healthcare.
Well,
We
hey,
really should have universal
let's
health
write their
care.
names on the wall too. Let's write their names on the wall
Yeah.
too. If you're in the government and you're fucking around, your name's on the list. Hey, I'm not going to do anything myself. I'm out of the country. I have no interest
So
in hurting other people.
tell
But
me a little bit about the health care that you get in Japan, John.
okay, so we pay for healthcare here, of course. Um, like in the US. I pay, I don't know, it's probably about $200 a month or so. And then when I go to the doctor for pretty much anything, I pay 1/3 of the cost out of pocket. That's kind of like your deductible, I guess.
Mhm.
Although we don't really have a deductible. You just always pay 1/3 of whatever everything costs. But the cost of everything is so small compared to the US. Like I go and I get well, anything like chest X-ray or whatever, and I pay like $10, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
We do have the most expensive healthcare in the world
Yes,
in the
it's
US.
terrible. It's
People
horrible.
go bankrupt. They
Yes,
lose
I
their
know.
homes.
Like
Yeah.
I could get cancer and I might have to pay like $10,000, right? For the full course of treatment over however many months, years, or whatever it costs. But like that's it. And there's no people sending me bills like months later saying, "Oh, I looked at your chart and now you owe me another
Right.
$10,000." Right?
Yes.
That doesn't happen in Japan. Not at
Yeah.
all. There's just none of that. You pay a third and it's a very small amount of money.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's why our system's so broken, John. You have no idea what the cost of your healthcare is when you
You have
go in for
no
any
idea.
given.
No
And
idea
they'll
at all.
send you bills for months.
Ambulance are free here. The
Yeah.
ambulance is just free. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't cost anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the bad part is, like, you get into an ambulance, they have to start calling around to hospitals to see who's open and who's got, space and stuff like that. So they might drive around for an hour, but then,
At
but
least
it's
you're getting some
free.
care while you're
It's
at it,
free.
right?
Yes, you're getting some care while you're at it. It's free, and you will end up somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And then when you get there, it's not going to be very expensive. Like just the cost of healthcare is very, very affordable. And it's just good. You can go for anything. Like
Yeah.
for children, it's often free or there's a limit of like $5. And with the exchange rate at the moment, it's probably like $3. Like it's really cheap. And that's the maximum for children, no matter what they do in a month. And that's for an entire month. So if you go once and you pay your 500 yen, which is like $3, and
Right.
then the next time you go, you don't pay for anything because for the entire month,
Within the same month.
within
Yes.
the same month, it's the maximum is 500 yen, or it depends on the city and whatever, but it's a certain amount and it's very, very small. And then for the rest of the month, it's free. And
Yeah.
for adults, it's always a third, but it's always super affordable. You get, like I said, chest x-rays or whatever. I think the highest I've ever paid, ever, and that was probably like with surgery included, is probably like $30,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
Well, and in the US, I think people just don't know any different.
No, they
They're
don't.
not looking at other countries to see how it's being done. John
Yeah.
was telling me the other day about one of his coworkers who went into the ER for something that was going on, and
Mm,
he got a bill for $4,000.
yeah.
He went back and said, "Could you please give me an itemized, list
List. Yeah.
of what I'm paying for?"
Yeah.
Well, when they gave him an itemized list, it was something like $1,500.
Uh-huh. Okay, so yes, they add on extras, right? They add on
Yeah,
these taxes to pay for the people who don't pay for anything
don't
in
pay.
certain states.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the people who are paying are suddenly paying extra just because some people don't pay. And
right.
so when I was in Massachusetts, uh, I heard that people were going to New Jersey to get health care. No, sorry. And when I was in New York, people would go to New Jersey to get health care because they have this law that says they can't ask for payment until after care is given. And so people would just go to New Jersey, they would give a fake name, they would get their health care, and then they would just leave,
Never pay.
never pay,
Yeah.
right? Always go to the emergency room because that's the place where especially they will take care of you
Right.
first and ask for money later. And if you don't have the money, you don't pay for it.
Right.
And
Well,
so
some
then
people
when,
use just the ER as their health care
yes,
because they can't pay at all. And
exactly,
so they wait
exactly.
until it's an emergency. They could be treated early in whatever issue it is that they have, and it would
Yeah,
be a fraction
I
and they would
know,
be
right?
much healthier. But
Preventative
instead,
healthcare.
yes,
Yes,
preventative. Who knew?
I know. Well, the health insurance companies certainly don't know
Right.
because they have not
Right.
figured it out. Oh my God. What a mess. Is it any
Yeah.
wonder these people are getting shot? I'm not surprised at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised. Like I said,
Yep.
I can't claim to condone the act, but I'm not
Well,
surprised by it.
I kind of condone it.
Uh, uh, I would rather see us change the system instead
I
of kill
agree with
people.
you. I would rather change the system. I do not see the system changing, not unless people are
Yeah.
being killed. That's when people are going to say, "Hey, maybe we should change something," right?
And historically,
All of
that's
our
who we are as
CEOs,
human beings.
all of our CEOs keep getting murdered. Maybe we should do something. Nobody wants to be the CEO anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because is all that money worth your life?
Yeah, right.
All right, John. Great discussion. Again,
Yeah.
we'll leave this for other people to continue to think about, but I
Yeah.
appreciate all of your input. I knew you'd
You're
be
very welcome.
enthusiastic.
Yes. Well, I'm always
All
enthusiastic, I
right.
guess.
All right. Till next time.
Yep.
All
Bye.
right.
If you enjoyed this content, please hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications.